Hello everyone, I'm Albert, I'm representing Team 1 Romania and I'm from Cambridge School of Bucharest.
Hello everyone, I'm Untitled from Romania, representing Team 1 Romania in the World Economics Cup, and I'm from British School of Bucharest.
Hello guys, my name is Maya and I'm from Cambridge School of Bucharest, also representing Romania.
Hello everyone, I'm Pepa and I'm part of Team 1 Romania. I'm in British School of Bucharest.
Hello, my name is Nora. I'm also part of Team 1 Romania and I'm from Cambridge School of Bucharest.
Hello, my name is Elena and I'm also part of Team 1 Romania. And I'm at Cambridge School of Bucharest. First of all, we are going to start with the first question, which is the one on the law of one price. And the first question is, how does the law of one price assume a theoretical frictionless market and what factors can violate it? First of all, it is a theoretical frictionless market. So in this case, realistically talking, there are transportation costs, so they clearly violate it. To have prices will differ from one country to the other because it costs to deliver one product from one country to another. There are significant trade barriers like tariffs or VAT taxes, which may differ in different countries. Fluctuations in exchange rate will make products in one country relatively more expensive than in the other. So in this case, the law of one price would not occur. As well, there will be differences in preferences for consumers, and firms will charge different prices in different countries as they will benefit of a larger producer surplus by the use of price discrimination. As well, because of barriers to entry and exiting the market differ from one country to another, some countries may be able to practice price discrimination as they may have more market power. And as well, the law of one price assumes perfect access to information, which realistically talking, it's impossible to have perfect access to information. And then the second question was for us to demonstrate how trade barriers can cause violations of the law of one price. And in this case, we have drawn diagrams showing how tariff being put in place will lead to a rise in the price, as it can be seen in country A, that as the tariff was placed, the price has risen from PA to PA with tariff. And the third question, we had to provide a real-world example of the law of one price, which failed to hold. And in this case, we have used the Big Mac index, which is a example given by The Economist of the price of a Big Mac from McDonald's, the hamburgers, from how the prices of each differ in different countries. And we have talked that the cost of production vary from one country to the other, like ingredients, labor, and rent may differ significantly from one country to another. There may be different taxes and regulations, which will affect the cost of production. As well, there may be differences in consumer preferences and behavior, and they may use price discrimination. And as well, the purchasing power parity differs, as we talked before about the fluctuations in exchange rates.
For question 2, I think we should first start off with the definition of third-degree price discrimination. I define it as when a firm sells an identical good or service at a different price to different consumer groups. So the first sub-question is, what conditions allow firms to segment markets and charge different prices? There's many different conditions, but the three most essential, I believe, is firstly, a firm has to have high market power and identically a high market share. And this is so that they have the price setting abilities in their market to be able to charge different prices for the same good. The second essential market condition is to have the ability to split consumer groups into separate groups. And as we can see from the diagram, we have the first inelastic group, second, which is the middle diagram, is elastic, and the third group is combined, but we'll focus on the first two graphs. And the third market condition is high barriers to arbitrage. This is because this firm has to have a limited ability to resell with their consumer groups. As such, this is a condition because otherwise the higher priced consumer groups will simply not buy it from the firm, but rather from a third-party seller, which has bought it at a lower price. The second sub-question is, how can third-degree price discrimination impact consumer surplus? And give an example of it. So the example I like to focus on, and I think is really relevant, is all the private taxi firms, so Uber, Bolt, or Lyft. How does it impact? Firstly, we have different prices at different times in the day. So for example, let's say during rush hour at 5 p.m. in London, for a 5-kilometer trip, they will charge maybe double the price than if it was at 11 a.m. And so the consumer surplus decreases at rush hour peak times because they know that the demand is inelastic, which is shown in the first diagram on the left. We also have woman for woman, which are higher prices based on gender preferences. So if a woman consumer wants to have a woman driver, they'll be forced to pay a higher price because they know that their demand is inelastic. We also have mileage. So for example, a 5-kilometer trip in Bucharest is maybe half the price of a 5-kilometer trip in London. This is because, once again, it is typical that the average GDP per capita in London is much greater. So they know that consumers are more willing to spend a greater price for their product. And so consumer surplus decreases because they're being charged a higher price for the same good or service. And we also have Uber executive cards, which are higher prices based on the consumer preferences and income. Now, the third sub-question is, discuss the fairness issues associated with third-degree price discrimination. I think the biggest ethical and moral problem firms have is not providing essential goods to those who can't afford it. It is a very big problem, and it was highlighted in the pandemic where pharmaceutical companies charged exorbitantly higher prices for medicine or for vaccines, especially in the UK. And as such, some people were left without an essential medicine, which maybe they could have used and lived a longer life or a healthier life. And that's one of the biggest issues. And we also have a very high income inequality. And so maybe it's not fair that someone in London has to have a higher price trip just because they're in London and they make more money. And so that's also a very ethical problem, and also have asymmetric information between the firm and the consumer.
Okay, so for second-degree price discrimination, an example of it would be electricity pricing. So as more electricity would be harvested, there will be economies of scale, which will lower prices. Thus, it will improve the accessibility to it. So the more users, the lower the prices. As characteristics of the second-degree price discrimination would be able to have economies of scale. The PD is elastic, as it can be seen in the graph, and there is an effective communication of pricing strategy to consumers. So as the price is lowered, the consumer surplus increases. The benefits of it would be that the higher the output, the higher the revenue. So there's cross-subsidization. And as there will be potentially high profits, the producers will be able to reinvest into research and development, thus more innovation. In the diagram, it can be seen that as the price decreased, the output increased as well, and the consumer surplus increased. So it would be beneficial. We can switch to the fourth question.
So for this part, the problem-solving question told us to evaluate the trade-offs involved in using the Robinson-Patman Act to protect small businesses versus adhering to the consumer welfare standard. In our response, we analyzed the economic incentives created by the law and the potential impact on producer and consumer welfare. And in doing so, we use economic theories and concepts. Firstly, I would like to introduce this act. The Robinson-Patman Act was introduced in 1936 in a US antitrust law, preventing large franchises and chains from engaging in price discrimination against small businesses. Its aim was to prevent unfair competition from large retailers and protect small firms. In doing so, its aim is to prevent suppliers, wholesalers, or manufacturers from supplying goods to preferred customers at a reduced price. Under this act, it is illegal to charge different prices to different purchasers, which would eliminate price discrimination. It is legal, however, to charge a lower price to a specific buyer if the cost of serving that buyer is lower, or if the seller is simply, quote unquote, meeting competition.
So there are a couple of benefits associated with the Robinson-Patman Act, both for consumers and producers. Firstly, by preventing price discrimination, a variety of different businesses can join the markets and produce more unique products rather than what would be produced if the products were mass-produced, enriching the marketplace and overall providing more options for the consumers. Moreover, this type of legislation fosters increased competition, and so resulting in more firms on the market. This might encourage them to become more innovative and enhance the quality of their offerings. However, this enhancement doesn't only refer to the product itself. It can also result in new business models, which may be more efficient and which would reduce costs and even lower prices, which might increase the purchasing power of the population. And lastly, it's important to note that it might prevent monopolistic tendencies, which could lead to market inefficiencies. However, due to this act, there's more competition on the market, preventing such events from occurring.
Okay, so the cons of using the Robinson-Patman Act would be that as there will be higher prices for consumers, as large retailers are prohibited, there will be preferential pricing, so second degree pricing determination, and there will be a reduced consumer surplus. This will negatively affect the producer's welfare. It will impact their profit margins, and they might respond to this by reducing the output or probably exiting the market. So in conclusion, there might be a deadweight loss in terms of the overall market efficiency.
Now we need to consider what is consumer welfare and what do we need to consider when looking at it. I define consumer welfare standard as a framework to evaluate and assess the impact of economic policies, regulations, and market structures on the well-being of consumers. And when you're considering the effectiveness of these policies and regulations on the well-being of consumers, you need some key aspects to look at. First is efficiency and how the market allocates the resources efficiently. We need the competition and perhaps the different market structures and how they impact the consumers, the consumer choice, the price stability, and the dynamic efficiency. So moving forward, we have the benefits and consequences or trade-offs of adhering the consumer welfare standard. The first benefit is efficiency and lower prices. So essentially what the consumer welfare standard focuses on is maximizing economic welfare by promoting efficiency and competitive markets. This often leads to lower prices because if a firm wants to compete with another firm, they will usually engage, depending on the market structures, in price wars. This is so they attract more consumers with a lower price, and as such, we have more revenue and more products sold. And as such, this leads to a lower price for the consumers, which increases the consumer welfare. The second benefit is innovation and product quality. So encouraging competition through these acts can lead to innovation and higher product quality by forcing firms to not collude and as such price fix and not engage in price wars. And as such, they will be forced to be more innovative, create better products so they attract more consumers and overall create a better service. However, the consequences might be a potential for labor market challenges. And so strict adherence to consumer welfare standard might inadvertently contribute to some challenges in the labor market. So firms that seek to lower costs may sacrifice working conditions or may make workers redundant or engage in wage stagnation. And as such, it impacts the welfare of workers and as such the consumers in other markets. And the second consequence, and the very important one we really need to consider, is the disregard to environmental externalities. And as such, for firms that are in the pursuit of consumer welfare, they might sacrifice some of their environmental obligations. And businesses might disregard these external costs because it is simply not in their interest. Their interest is to profit maximize or adhere to these policies which are given.
Using a cost-benefit analysis, we concluded that we should use the RP Act, but also attempt to tackle the problems derived from this. Are the benefits of protecting smaller businesses greater than the benefits of adhering to the consumer welfare standard? And are the consequences of protecting smaller businesses greater than the consequences of adhering to consumer welfare standard?
All right, so we have looked for a possible improvement in the Robinson-Patman Act, and it will be to update and modernize the act. So we know that essentially the the act was originally enacted in the mid-20th century when traditional brick-and-mortar retail dominated the market. And in order to make it more effective and applicable today, the act should be updated to address e-commerce and online retail, this including considering issues related to pricing, competition, and consumer protection in the digital marketplace. As well, the act would need to account for the unique pricing practices associated with e-commerce, such as dynamic pricing, personalized offers, and algorithm-driven pricing strategies. Regulations should be designed in order to prevent any abuses of market power or anti-competitive practices in the online place. As well, we know that with the nature of the global nature of e-commerce, the Act should consider cross-border trade and competition, as it is necessary to work in coordination with international antitrust agencies in order to ensure fair competition in a global marketplace.
Overall, charging different prices to different businesses' customers is such a common practice among businesses in virtually all industries, and because antitrust enforcement resources are necessarily limited and small relative to the size of the economy, prosecutors have to be highly selective in when and which cases to pursue, or else rely on private civil actions to enforce the law. Potential for abusive suits under the law. Some industries may not be impacted as they may have so much power, but politically they may not be impacted.